Welcome back to the Blister and Muck Storytime Podcast. I'm Jenny Mason, author and creator of the Blister and Muck series. Storytime. I have always loved that phrase. It brings with it warm, ember-tinted memories of story time at the local library, or bedtime stories at home. Or in second grade, when the teacher, Mrs. Jackson, would pause the daily lesson plan and read to the class. Every day for, 30 minutes or an hour, we'd pillow our arms on our desks, lower our heads, and just listen to Mrs. Jackson read from Wilson Rawls' novel, Where the Red Fern Grows. And I find it interesting that all my storytime memories are ember-tinted. That is, my imagination has lit them all with a fiery glow. That reddish-orange flickering light. It's like my mind downloaded one of those fancy Instagram filters and stuck it onto each and every one of those storytime memories. I mean, it's definitely an artificial add-on in my imagination because I did not grow up with the iconic romantic fireplace, the kind you see in all those cottage home decor magazines, or on every iconic holiday greeting card. You know the kind I mean, right? The wide open box in the wall, trimmed with glossy wood and topped with a mantel. Logs stacked on a metal grate, with a mound of red embers beneath and twisting flames above. We didn't have that in my home. We had a big, black cast-iron stove. It wasn't for displaying the nostalgic loveliness of fire. It was for heating the house. And we certainly didn't have a cozy fireplace with crackling flames in Mrs. Jackson's second grade classroom. So where does that warm, flickering light come from? Why does my imagination slap on that filter as if a crackling fire is supposed to be there during story time? Maybe because a crackling fire has always been there. Maybe the fireside story time is just ingrained into the human genome. Because story time certainly dates farther back than Mrs. Jackson's classroom. I suspect it goes all the way back with our species. Coming together around a bright, warm fire, our backs shielding us from darkness and danger, so our hearts could absorb the songs and stories of our elders. The songs and stories that kept us alive, because on a very basic level, that's what stories do. They pass on information. Here's how you hunt. Or here's what the stars tell us about the weather. And here's some history. Mistakes made in the past that hopefully we won't repeat in the present. But that's at a basic level. In their most elevated forms, the best stories do so much more. They help us make sense of ourselves. They help us make sense of the chaos that is living in this world at any given time. And if nothing else, they bring us a few moments of togetherness and stillness and warmth. Whether or not you have a fireplace, I hope you're warm where you are. I hope you're comfortable so that you can just be still. I hope you've shushed your little brother for the last time, because we left Blister and Muck right in the middle of a rather dangerous moment. They had just encountered a strange electric trap, a trap that sprang as soon as Muck moved the hunk of moldy cheese. Episode 2, The Bell Tower. Blister eased off Muck's shoulders, where he sprang for safety, not because he'd been frightened.
"Ticks and maggots! What kind of rat trap is that?" he demanded.
For this was not the usual variety of spine-bending snap traps that all rats recognized and avoided. "A cleverly camouflaged one," Muck replied. Blister edged nearer to the cube. It was a compact cage with room enough to hold a full-grown bilge rat. The metal mesh no longer mimicked filth. Now it wore a surly silver grin. Blister noticed a copper wire connecting the cage to a battery block stashed behind the rubbish bins. The acids and metals inside the block whispered hisses and pops. He thought of the poster for Dr. Van Sangfroid's incredible Incarceratters. He recalled the instructions. Redeem contents, receive 22 cents. Over the years, Blister had seen a lot of rat extermination schemes come and go, but to this one he assigned extra points for its unique approach. Usually, the exterminators chased after the rats, but in this case, the rats came to the exterminator. Definitely different, but also doomed to fail. Given time, rats always found a way to outsmart every trap. Muck pulled the cheese hunk off the fork. I say we split it. 50-50 seems the fairest of fractions. A desirable division. An appropriate allocation. The best?
You've got to be kidding!
Blister wrapped his paws around his nose when Muck swung the cheese at him. Muck frowned. Oh, well, I suppose for the price of saving my life, 60-40 seems the more just juncture. Blister pulled his whiskers.
I don't believe it. You are serious.
Muck's face appled with anger. Fine. If you don't want the cheese, just say so. I'll devotedly devour the whole thing myself. Muck spread his jaws, ready to stuff his face.
Stop!
Blister slapped the cheese away.
Don't you know that cheese is laced?
Laced?
Someone drugged it with something.
Blister scrutinized the cheese with his nose.
Not poison, but something.
Oh my! What a devilish deed! An evil endeavor! A terrible turpitude!
Where exactly are you from?
Muck nodded his tail around his paws. Me? Oh, nowhere special. Just the country.
Sounds nice,
Blister said.
Maybe you should go back there, to the country.
Go back? Muck gulped.
Yeah, go back where it's safe, where all the cats want to cuddle, and all the cheese is clean. You aren't cut out for city life. Speaking of cutting, I'm afraid I've got to cut and run. Dreadfully sorry. Ta-ta, tea time, and all that rot.
Blister did his best imitation of Muck's voice. He doubled back to retrieve his apple, only to find an unkindness of ravens fighting over it.
Dung in the gutter!
Blister grabbed at the rubbish spilled from one of the overturned bins. He obtained a moldy potato. This he hurled at the birds, which scattered. A rusted apple core tumbled to Blister's toes. He cradled it and moped.
What did they do to you?
Muck patted Blister's shoulder. I don't understand your raven rage, but...
Of course you don't understand.
Blister shoved the core into Muck's arms and stormed away.
You're some witless silver whisker born and bred in one of those fancy country mansions. You come to the city seeking all the fun and excitement of a strange place, and you cause the rest of us nothing but trouble.
Blister tramped to the busy thoroughfare where the evening traffic of horse-drawn carriages shuttled people home. Silver Whisker, now see here, Muck pursued. At least I'm not some tough-tailed troglodyte. Blister wheeled around.
Careful, bread and butter. I may be a tough-tail, but I'm also the only reason you're alive right now.
Muck wilted. A reparation I would still like to redeem.
Meaning you want to pay me back?
Very much, yes.
Then go home.
Blister bounded for the sidewalk and darted up the trailing hemline of a lady's dress. Women wore so many layers of clothing strapped over stiff corsets and ballooning bustles that the addition of a rat passenger typically went unnoticed. Plus, all the elaborate ribbon drizzles and lacy festoons formed a perfect forest of hiding places. On this sauntering dress, Blister tucked himself inside a particularly poofy starburst bow adorning the bustle. He glanced back at the rat he called Muck. Muck's wide, moist eyes fixed on Blister. He clung to the corner of the nearest building like it was the last dry smidgen of a sinking ship. Blister reclined into the rigid loops of the bow. His cozy carriage swayed, inviting him to tuck his paws behind his head. The hard heels of the woman's shoes knocked the sidewalk in a soothing rhythm. But Blister was not soothed. He fussed and rustled. He sat up and griped things like, "It's not my fault he didn't know he was pilfering poisoned provolone." Or, "I'm dreadfully sorry, but I'm no tour guide. It's not my job to make sure he gets safely to the train station and back home where he belongs." Or, "Who do these country rats think they are, coming to the city with no survival skills?" Blister groused all the way to his neighborhood. He slid down the long skirt and entered a crack in the side of the abandoned cathedral. Despite being naturally nocturnal, Blackrust's common street rats never ventured out at night. They huddled together in the cold sewer tunnels and catacombs, avoiding the wharf rats. Long ago, Blister had departed the sewers. For the record, he was not, and had never been, afraid of the dark down there. He simply preferred to sleep under starry skies. He ascended the stone stairs, twirling into the one spire that had not yet collapsed. At the top, he entered the belfry that served as home. An old bell the size of a boat hung from wood scaffolding. Over that soared a cupola punctured with decorative holes. At the moment, these holes filled with the sunset's cranberry and nectarine colors. Legions of candles stood around the bell tower on white ponds of melted wax. Boxes of new candles piled against the stone walls. Blister lit several wicks. He shimmied onto a window ledge and gazed out over the city. A large brown spider scuttled out of his web and rushed over to Blister. The spider waggled his whole body and looped in eager circles. "Hiya, Spindle." Blister scratched the spider on the furry patch right between his eye clusters. "Were you a good boy today? Huh?" Spindle hopped and drummed his legs. He darted back to his web. He yanked a grasshopper leg out of the sticky strings and carried it over his head. "No fetch tonight. I'm tired." Spindle ran in a circle, wiggled, and nudged Blister with the leg. "I said no." Spindle clubbed Blister with the leg. Thunk, thunk, thunk. "Ow! Okay. Blister snatched the appendage and tossed it across the window ledge. The spider ran full speed to retrieve it. Eventually, Spindle switched from fetch to tug-of-war. At last the arachnid tuckered out and curled up in the swirl of Blister's tail. The last light of the sun smeared the world with cinnamon, and the ocean transformed into a vast peach cobbler. Rum. Blister's stomach grumbled. He sighed and hugged his midsection. "One day you'll forget that word." Spindle uprooted himself and fetched a dead fly from his web, which he offered to Blister. "You're a good spider, Spindle." He patted the spider's head. "I bet you'd give me all the bugs in the world if you could." The spider tat-a-tapped his legs. "Unfortunately, a rat's stomach is too big for a fly. You keep it and enjoy it." Spindle cradled the fly in his front arms as he tucked himself back into the bend of Blister's tail. There he gnawed the bug and lapped its juices. "Tomorrow, I'll have to go see Madame Putresca." Blister said this more to instruct himself than to inform the spider. Spindle stopped chewing and angled all of his eyes at Blister. "I know, Spindle, I know. I said never again. I said going solo was the only way to make it in this world. But..."
He stared at the horizon. The ocean cobbler had long since charred black, but with the sun fully down, the sky chilled into a lovely plum pudding. "I'll just go for the one job." Spindle nipped Blister. "I promise! Just the one to tide me over, okay?" Blister stroked all of Spindle's furry spots until the spider fell fast asleep. Holding his knees to his chest, he watched the pudding sky darken into a gooseberry tart glittered with sugar crystals. In the next episode, we follow Blister into Madame Putresca's subterranean caverns. Will she cave and offer him work in exchange for food? Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and you'll always get the latest episode. As always, thank you for listening. Head over to blisterandmuck.com and use the contact form to let me know what you enjoyed in this episode, what surprised you, or what you think will happen next. What would you name a pet spider? Everyone can support the show by sharing it with friends on social media. If you're in a position to give financially, just click Support the Show at blisterandmuck.com. Special thanks to composer Roland Rudzaitis, whose tune, If Only Walls Could Speak, serves as the Blister and Muck theme song. Mike Koenig provided the ocean waves. Lisa Fern brought the crickets. Thanks to the Free Music Archive and Mon Plaisir for their song, Chicken, used in the intro. Composer John Bartman's song, Heart of Acceptance, closed out this episode. As always, I am grateful for the guidance and input from my family, friends, and fans. One for one, and all for you.